Well, thanks very much, Jess, and thanks for the opportunity to present Western Mines Group today, and in particular our Mulga nickel sulfide discovery. This is our standard disclaimer. Western Mines Group is a nickel exploration company. We strongly resist the temptation to become an antimony meme stock. We've recently discovered the Mulga deposit. This is the largest nickel sulfide deposit ever found in Australia. Our exploration is led by Dr. Ben Gruick, who's the first author on nearly every scientific paper on Mount Keith, which is the analogy to our deposit and the previous largest deposit. This sort of talks to something of our ethos. We very much are per share focused. Myself and fellow founder Frank are still reasonably large shareholders in the company. We believe if you look after the share count, the shareholder value will look after itself. We've been listed for 4 years now. We've put about $10 million into this project to unveil a pretty incredible resource. We've still only just doubled the share count during that time to just over. We've just recently done a capital raise. We now just have over 100 million shares outstanding. So why nickel? We're actually very constructive on nickel. We think it's in a pretty great place. We see a very firm floor in the pricing at $15,000 a tonne now, and we see that price only going up. The Indonesians have sort of gone out and they've mined the high grade first, the closest to infrastructure. Through time we see that cost base going up as they become more ESG compliant, which I think is a big theme that they're starting to push. Again, that'll only increase the cost base there. So if we can be a Western sulfide producer coming in the bottom half of the cost curve, we're in sulfide, so we're always going to be less CO2 intensive. We think these are strategic assets in a new world in a 3 to 5 year view. So here we are in Western Australia, world-class nickel province. We're just 2 hours outside of Kalgoorlie, but we're exploring undercover in a frontier terrain where we've put together the entire Menigual greenstone belt. So this is about a 425 square kilometre package. We've got an entire Archean greenstone belt undercover. So we've been focused on nickel to date, but we think this is actually a pretty good gold project as well. The analogies that we're looking for are the likes of Mount Keith, a large disseminated type 2 system, but actually increasingly we believe this is more akin to Perseverance. This will be a high-grade hybrid system, and we think there's a very good chance for finding high-grade basal massive sulfides as well. So if we just zoom in on the Menigual belt, here's our land package. This is an Air Mag image. As I say, we're exploring undercover here. Where do you go in the world to find large nickel deposits? Or you're generally within 30 kilometres of terrain boundaries. So we are sitting just 35 kilometres away from the Burtville terrain boundary. You've got this upwelling magma has formed this large dunite intrusion, and continuing up the belt are these extrusive Komatite flow channels. We've been focused on the dunite at the southern end of that predominantly, and that's where we put out our first resource. We've stepped out and tested that first second intrusion to the north. That's also mineralized, and there's 3 or 4 analogous things continuing further up the belt. These were our discovery holes a couple of years ago now, funded with the help of government EIS grants. We're able to drill deep diamond holes through this large intrusion. Some of these were 1,500 meters deep. We see 800-900 meters of disseminated pentlandite mineralization. Nice black dunite core with nice shiny bits of pentlandite in them. So this is just a cartoon of this body. It's absolutely huge in scale, 5 kilometers across, as I say, about 1,500 meters deep, and generally mineralized all the way through. It's a pretty insane piece of rock that as soon as you get underneath the sand cover, it's 45% plus high MgO, adcumulate to extreme adcumulate dunite. Very unusual piece that's very heavily mineralized in pentlandite. We focused just on that top box in red. We went back and over the last 2 years we've done 3 phases of RC drilling. The first systematic exploration of this body, we've drilled 62 holes to date, 59 of them are mineralized. Some of these, as soon as you get underneath the sand, we've drilled nearly entirely mineralized holes, 240 meters at around about 0.3% nickel with associated cobalt, chalcophile elements, and we're particularly proud of, when we get onto it, our sulfur content is kind of 4 times some of these Canadian peers. So we put all that together. In April of this year, we block modeled the whole lot, and within that, zones that are spaced at 200 meters by 200 meters we're able to classify as an inferred resource, and there's parts of that at 100 by 100 is an indicated. And all told, that's about 5.3 million tons of contained nickel, about 1.6 of that in indicated, and about 3.6 in inferred status. So that comfortably makes us the largest nickel deposit in Australia, and very likely top 10 if not top 5 in the world. We see the Western world increasingly moving to these low-grade disseminated nickel deposits, and the leaders in that are Canada Nickel and their Crawford deposit. We think we're hot on the heels there. We're probably about 3 years behind them. These guys have put out a full feasibility study on a 0.22% nickel ore body, demonstrating that all-in sustaining cost of about just less than $4,000 a ton. So we think our deposit beats them on every single line of that BFS. We're moving into a scoping study now that we hope to put out next year to demonstrate the economics. But we see a re-rate 5 to 8 times our market cap over the next few years just to catch up with those guys on a superior ore body. But that's not all. As I alluded to at the start, this isn't just Mount Keith, this isn't just a disseminated system. As we drill these deep diamond holes, we see about 91 indications of remobilized massive sulfide, either in veins and fracture fill, or we see large immiscible globules and sulfide segregations at depth. So you're seeing all the intermediate members where you're forming massive sulfide deposits within that. We also see this in some of the shallow RC drilling. We're getting intersections of up to 4.5% nickel in very shallow intersections, nearly 5% copper in places as well. We haven't been able to go back and follow up on any of these yet. They're still very wide spaced, but there's some very nice intersections here. Some holes 4 meters at 1% and 5 meters at 2% within the same hole, or within the top 300 meters. So we hope that we can go and re-drill some of those, try and find some higher grade pods of ore that will improve the economics of an overall lower pit. Also looking at some of these deep diamond holes, we're starting to put together the architecture of this intrusion, and some of these holes we can correlate across maybe 800-900 meters. We're seeing a very active basal zone where we get down to that depth off the basal contact, and we start to move into these large globules, the remobilized massive, these large sulfidic melt pockets across several hundred meters. So the question really becomes is what lies at depth within this dunite. We think it's sitting, the intrusion is still sitting right way up, largely intact in situ. And we think there's a perseverance down there somewhere, and all the indications are that we're clipping cloud sulfide, potentially around a larger deposit or multiple larger higher grade deposits. So we're getting some nice intersections, 100 150 meters up to 0.4, 0.5% nickel, and that grades up as it gets more concentrated into the 1.5%. So the discovery hole of Perseverance was about 100, 120 meters at about 1.5% nickel. So we don't think we're too far off finding something like that. The trouble is it's quite a large area. We're drilling very small holes. We need to keep testing these zones, downhole EM, look for the off-hole conductors to try and vector into where Perseverance is hiding down there. So we've recently just done a capital raise last week, amazingly, a nickel company in the current environment. Did our largest capital raise in the last 4 years, so we're now quite well funded for the next 6 to 12 months. We've got more money in the bank now than we've had since March 2022. And so lots of news flow coming, certainly focused on the open pittable current resource. We'll both infill that to try and join those two layers of indicated together, one coherent indicated body that we'll do a scoping study on. We'll look to expand that to the south as well. We're doing metallurgical test work demonstrating we can achieve recoveries superior to these Canadian deposits. That'll all get wrapped up and put into a scoping study next year, as I said. We've got another outstanding EIS grant to again target this deeper basal massive sulfide of the main body, and then stepping up the belt we're starting to look at these other deposits or these other intrusive or extrusive bodies. And the first one up the panhandle there is a 1.5 kilometer long mineralized comatite channel system. We're going to do a moving loop EM survey over that between now and Christmas, and again we've got 2 more EIS grants totaling about 8 or 9 holes, 2 or 3 diamond and another 4 or 5 RC where we go and obliterate that in the first quarter of next year. So just in summary, we think there's multiple world-class nickel deposits can be found on this belt that we're just getting into. We always strive to do very high quality technical work, and we try and do that very frugally, certainly in what's been a difficult environment for nickel, and we'll continue to persist with that in what we think is a very exciting project. Thank you very much for your time.